Hello, my name's Marcus and welcome back to the Recovery Hub podcast. We've called this series Families Recover To, dedicated to family members and loved ones of those affected by addiction. Thank you to North Wales Area Planning Board for funding this project.
In today's conversation, we have Marcus, and he is talking with Richard. It was a chance encounter that I met Richard as his band was rehearsing here at the bunker one night as I was here, and I got chatting to him on his break. He was curious as to what we do here at Eternal Media, so I explained to him, and it turns out that he was really interested in coming along to chat with us as he was a podcaster himself, and he had experience related to this series that we're making. I really enjoyed editing this episode, and I'm really sure that you'll enjoy this episode too. I chose to leave in the preamble for this episode as I found it was adding quite a bit to the conversation before it really gets going, but it doesn't take too long before it properly gets formally started. Anyways, here it is.
Well, they say there isn't a cure to addiction, but if there is one, it's a talking cure. I thought I was addicted to drugs. I wasn't. That's just how my obsession manifested itself. Mm-hmm. Not everyone who's addicted to drugs is an addict.
No, okay.
People can become dependent upon drugs or alcohol. That doesn't mean they're an alcoholic. That doesn't mean they're a drug addict. It just means they're dependent.
I loved talking to my friend Carrie because she just taught me all this. I'm on the peripheral of addiction, being Carrie's best mate and being my older brother's younger brother. I don't get to, and obviously I know some of the stuff that my older brother went through because I went through similar growing up. It wasn't the best upbringing, not from my mum's point of view, but from my dad, because of my dad and certain things. So I knew that, and then with Carrie as well, I knew some of the things that she'd been through, and which is why I never judged, because I could understand. I mean, her mum died in horrific circumstances, and I just think if that was my mum, I would need some way to take away. However, her mum was an addict as well. So is there I can't think of words lately. Hereditary, is the hereditary angle to it as well?
I've interviewed a lot of people, a lot of films and stuff, and this came up recently in the prison interviewing, and it was so we're interviewing a lad, and he was talking. I thought, this sounds familiar, and he mentioned his dad's name, and I used to use with his dad. We scored together in Bangor, and he put me up a lot when I was homeless in his little flat thing. We're both absolutely fucked, but now I've met his son, and he's an addict, and the son even said, despite what I saw growing up with my father in addiction, I still became an addict. Mm-hmm. I've also interviewed people who didn't become addicted, who didn't become addicts, but their parents were addicts, and they didn't go into addiction because they saw how terrible it was for their parents. So I don't know if it's hereditary.
Yeah, maybe there's two, like I say a lot with, I don't know, using fast food for an example, you can either go one way or the other. Like if you're raised and you were never allowed McDonald's, then as you grow up, you'll either not want McDonald's or you'll want it more.
Yeah, I'm the second camp.
Yeah, McDonald's for us was once a year at a birthday party. Yeah. And now I use too many takeaways all of the time. Is that recording?
Yeah, I've got to keep a real lid on it.
Yeah, no, me too. 3 or 4 takeaways a week, that's...
Oh, I ballooned when I came out of rehab. In there.
I only put weight on my stomach. I hate it.
I got up to 23 stone. It wasn't, it was fat. It was just cross addict to something else. Mm-hmm. There's always something. If you've been in addiction, I just feel there's always something.
Well, I wonder, I was thinking about this over the weekend. I wonder how many people are addicts of something. I wonder if that crosses most of society.
I think, I do believe it's a disease of obsession. And I think, I got on drugs when I was very young. Mm-hmm. So, but if you look at Obama, I don't think you'd become the first black president of America if you weren't absolutely driven and obsessed to get there and tunnel vision to get there. I think he could have quite easily got into something else. And I think addicts are incredibly driven people.
Do you think there's a neurodivergence angle to it as well? Is there?
It's of everyone.
So is there a higher percentage of maybe autism or ADHD or anything in the addict community?
Not when I was growing up, because that wasn't, you were just a naughty kid.
Diagnosed, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 51.
Oh, okay. You look young for your age. I thought we were near enough the same age. But it is similar to, it was naughty kid. You were just a naughty kid when I was
Naughty kid, weren't you?
Until maybe 20 years ago.
And thrown in set 4 or 5 or City and Guilds or whatever in my year.
Yeah. I'm undiagnosed, but everyone says it's clear that I've got ADHD. And my older brother actually has just been diagnosed about a year ago.
It's just different. I'm glad I grew up when I did, or I'd probably have all kinds of labels attached to me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was saying that. I'm very accepting of everyone and who they are and their lives and how we're all different. But I just wonder sometimes, if I was growing up now, would I be labelled as trans? Because I always wanted to play with dolls, and I wanted to wear my mum's clothes and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that that's what someone that is trans, what I'm talking about is labels being put on people. Yeah. Like I spoke to my friend India about this, and she said to me, no, because when she was a kid, a little boy, she knew that she was a little girl. There was just no doubt, whereas I didn't. I just wanted to play with dolls and wear mum's clothes. But yeah, it's exhausting being on social media as an adult. I can't imagine it as a kid. But it's also kind of addictive. Like, I'm always on X. It's not as harmful though, is it? And I suppose
there's no respite for kids though. They might get a load of shit at school, a load of grief or whatever, because like kids are cruel. They're always picking out on what's different at school, and because they don't want to be bullied, they bully, or they kind of, it's just how it was in my year anyway. You do anything to fit in. And that's another thing. Everyone I've always interviewed, I kind of normally ask, like, did you feel different at school? Yeah, I felt different at school. Everyone I've ever asked, yeah, I felt different at school. Very rare do they say, no, I didn't feel different. No. Yeah, I felt.
My brother was quite badly bullied at school. But then this is the thing, two people can go through what seems to be the same experience and just experience completely different things. He was badly bullied at school. I was badly bullied at school. He was a very naughty kid, in inverted commas. I wasn't. I kind of towed the line. I used to get badly bullied in school, but I couldn't wait to get to school. Like, I enjoyed school, even though it was getting there and back was like crossing enemy lines almost. Walking home, honest to God, I'd be. We had this thing called across the field. You'd walk and then you'd go through this hole in the hedge, and I remember I'd walk through the hole in the hedge and I'd have to check both ways first to see if any of the typical bullies were about. Funny enough, somebody messaged me on X the other day saying that I used to bully you in school. And I was like, I don't recognise your name. And they were like, well, the secret is I actually really fancied you. That's like very, very strange. This was just last Thursday. And I was like, this is a bit strange.
How did that feel?
It was a little bit strange because it seemed as if it seemed a little bit like it had turned into a kink for them.
Right.
So it was a little bit like, I messaged them yesterday saying, look, I'm not going to play this game with you anymore. It was extremely traumatic for me and still continues to be. Bullying kind of blighted my life because I wasn't just getting it at school, I was getting it at home. My dad and my older brother. I'd go into school. If it was now, so like talking about growing up now, social services would probably been involved because I had bruises all over me most of the time. And then that, like going into later life as well with my best friend, Carrie, what I was thinking of, she took her life last January, not January just gone, the January before. And I was thinking it's really difficult to think about the bad side of it, but being a best friend of somebody that was an alcoholic and a drug user, I had to put up with quite a bit of abuse.
Is this what we're going to talk about?
Yeah.
Right, shall we get into that then?
Yeah, go on then.
Right. We've got Richard in today. Richard, tell us about yourself a little bit.
I am a local singer, podcaster and mental health counsellor. And I have been on the peripheral of addiction, I suppose, most of my life.
You're also a policeman for a while.
I was 6 years in London. Well, I was a detention officer. Before they were a thing, I was one of the first 12 detention officers. Now they're all over the country. So working in custody, specifically in custody. So and one of my main jobs was to drug test detainees as soon as they came in. And if there was any that tested positive for, I think, heroin or coke, then we would refer them to the drug workers. So, very closely linked with...
Yeah, so you kind of, you would have been at the pointy end of addiction.
Yeah. I mean, there were people...
Consequences, really.
Yeah. The people that would come in and they'd be like, you don't need to drug test me. We had to, but, they'd be like, yeah, come on, send me to the drug worker. And there were people that really used that service and really enjoyed using it. And then there were people that weren't ready to engage yet. My best friend who I lost last year, I used to say to her a lot, she was, when she took her own life, she was 6 years in recovery. And I used to say to her, I am so sorry, and I will always be sorry that I wasn't brave enough to say to you the things that you see on TV, the cliche things. I think you've got a problem. Stage an intervention, that sort of thing. And she'd say, if I wasn't ready, then I wasn't ready. I was ready when I was ready.
And this is who you've come to talk about today.
Yeah, my best friend, Carrie.
So as a series, it is our loved ones in addiction as well. It's not, and that's absolutely open. It doesn't have to be within family. So Carrie, she was your best friend.
She was absolutely amazing. I first met her when I was 23, and we'd just moved into a flat in southeast London, and she was in the flat opposite our door. And I got into the lift one day, and there was this girl in the lift, a little 5'0" girl, looking really nice. And I said, God, you look lovely. Where are you off to? And she went, my mum's funeral. And then we burst out laughing between us. And our relationship was based a lot on comedy and our shared humour. And we just hit it off from there. But she was on the way to her mum's funeral, which her mum died in horrific circumstances. Obviously, Carrie found this really hard to think about, to deal with, to cope with, as I would, as most people would. That was her mum, and she loved her mum. Although her mum was also an addict. So I would wonder if there was a hereditary angle to this, or if that was one of the reasons that she drunk a lot. At the time, I didn't understand addiction at all. And we became really, really good friends before I even realised that there was an addiction as opposed to just normal drinking behaviour, I suppose. We were in our early 20s and we were going out and we were getting drunk, and I was getting drunk, The difference was I was able to go, I've had too much now, I'm going to go onto water. Whereas Carrie would then have me walking around to the shop with her to buy an extra bottle of wine. And it had to be, I think, 2.25 bottles of rosé and 4 cans. And if she didn't have that, then she wouldn't be able to concentrate.
And that's after a night out.
That's after the night out, right. Yeah.
So I guess, like myself, Carrie was born without the off switch.
Yeah. Yeah. Growing up, funny enough, that's just conjured up in me. Growing up, when my mum and dad split up and my mum got with her first boyfriend after that, he was similar, just didn't know when to stop. So the night had to continue forever in terms of drinking. Only the problem with him is it was whiskey, and whiskey made him nasty. Not physically, but verbally nasty and horrible. So yeah, that was very similar with Carrie. There was no off switch. The fun had stopped. But then it gets to a point where the fun kind of stopped. It stopped being fun. It was fun and it was hilarious. And I've got some brilliant stories and the most amazing memories. Some of the most amazing memories of my life are with and to do with Carrie. But then it'd get to a point where the fun would stop and it'd be like, come on now, it's bedtime, or your son needs dinner, or that sort of thing. And I suppose that's the sensible bit in me that could have made me judge her. But through knowing people like her, there's certain people in my life that I credit with teaching me to be as non-judgmental as I hope I am. I grew up with disabilities in my family, and my stepdad that my mum got with after the mentioned boyfriend then, is Arabic Muslim, and then there's me with my sexuality, and I'm so pleased with the people that I grew up with, because I feel like it taught me not to be judgmental. And then the things that I had judgments against, people as amazing as Carrie taught me to think again. And I could see, you know, Carrie's my best mate. Why would I judge her? I was choosing to be her best mate.
I guess I'm not looking for answers for you, but just putting myself in that situation because you care about it and you don't want her to overdo it or
I think it was easier for me to judge her
hurt herself
because she had a son, and I was thinking, hang on, this is where you have to put your wants and your needs aside and focus on him. And that was me looking at somebody and I suppose, I don't know, taking the addiction out of it and throwing that away and not even considering it.
So that's coming from your ethics and values.
Yeah, looking at things through my eyes instead of other people's eyes, which I've learned to do, hopefully, a lot more since then. And because of people like her. I keep looking down at that chair like she's sat there. She's not there. I keep I don't know, she's there so I can talk with her about her.
What would you say if she was there and I wasn't?
I'd say what I've said for the last 2 years, that I wish I was different on that last day that we spent together. I went down to London and we had a whole day planned. And this was 3 days before she took her life. And when I got there, I said, "What's up?" And she said, and she just burst out crying. And she said, "I think," bear in mind, like I said, she was 6 years in recovery at this point. And she was crying and she said, "I think the guilt has caught up with me. And I feel really bad for how I've treated my son when he was growing up." Like proper crying. And I wish I'd said something like, "Nobody's a perfect parent. There's no manuals." But I thought, I want to be as, not honest, but just allow you time to explore these thoughts and feelings. So I kind of stayed silent because I thought, I don't want to tell you that you were a perfect parent because you weren't. But what I could have said is, no one's a perfect parent. So that's what I'd say to her if she was here now. I wish I'd just said to you, no one's perfect. Allow it. And I did all of the things that I would tell everyone else not to when she killed herself. It was all like, blame. I'm to blame. And it was, horrendous time. And I'd give her a hug, obviously.
What was Carrie's drug of choice?
Cocaine and alcohol.
Right. So she didn't die through overdose or anything like that. It was a suicide.
Suicide, yeah. 6 years after being clean. And
That's tragic.
It is. And when she took her life, I was, and I don't know if this is good or bad from my point of view and the way that my brain was working, but I was kind of hoping that when she took her life, she was high or drunk, because I wanted to think that there was something there to take the pain away a little bit, or take the edge off. And I feel terrible for thinking that, because she'd done all that hard work. And there was a song that came out by Pink, and there was an album that was brought out by Pink, that she loved Pink as well, that same month. And there's a song on it, and it says, "If there's a bar, is there a bar up there where you've got a favourite chair?" And I was thinking, the song to me relates to Carrie, except people might think, oh no, she was a recovering alcoholic, she wouldn't want a bar. But and again, I was like, I'd want to think of her just having fun. I'd want to think of her being the Carrie that I remember, that, you know, would be at a party throwing everyone's shoes off a balcony at passing cars, stuff like that, because there was no filter when she'd had a drink. But when she'd gone, I mean, I was so proud of her, so proud of the work that she did, and so proud of all of that bravery that it must have taken to come off that and go through the therapy, and, you know, all of that grief from her mum's death that she hadn't, in her own words, dealt with because she'd suppressed. She had to go through all of that, and I was so proud of all that. However, when she was gone, all I hoped for is that if there is an afterlife, she's doing what she wants in it, rather than being dragged down by, I don't know. So a lot of the time she was judged by societal norms, I suppose. If there's a drunk woman in the street, then she's probably judged much harsher than a drunk man for a start. But also being drunk in the middle of there's a lot of times when I visibly saw people judging her without, and they've got no reason to, but without getting to understand the reasons why Carrie was drunk in the middle of the day or high in the middle of the day. Like I said, they've got no reason to not judge her. But I don't know, I suppose I'm a little bit ashamed to say that I was sometimes, am I embarrassed to say that, or is it just normal to say that it was sometimes quite embarrassing? And sometimes I had to put up with abuse from Carrie. Again, I'm pointing to the chair, she's not there. I had to, it was sometimes, and this is something I've struggled with since she's gone, thinking of and they addressed it on one of the soaps, and I remember thinking, no, that's really brave. I can't remember which soap it was, but I thought that's really brave for them to address the other side without seeming judgmental. But I did feel sometimes very abused. If she couldn't get her alcohol and I'd say something like, oh, it's all right, we've had a good night, let's just leave it there, I'd then be verbally abused, probably a couple of times physically abused. And that's hard to think that girl, because I suppose it completely changed her. She, like I said before, there's the fun stage of going out, and that's at the early stage. See, it makes me smile just talking about them because the memories come back. I remember once her saying to me, we were going into the West End. I think it was our first night out, actually. We were going into the West End, and I was taking her into Soho. And she said to me, oh, please don't embarrass me while we're out. And then I said to her, if you could have snapshot, like just stopped time there and fast forwarded an hour when she was swinging off lights and snogging all the guys in a gay pub, as well as all the women. And I just thought it would be a brilliant sketch for a sketch show. So many of the things that she did would have been brilliant in a sketch. But there was that fun side, and then it veered over probably to afterwards, either when we were on the way home or when we'd get home. And then it had become a bit more in my head, like those stereotypical, all smoke everywhere and bottles strewn across the floor, and it not being fun anymore and just feeling a bit like, I want out now. But Carrie wasn't in that state. And Carrie was very much like, with no off switch.
Mm. Do you remember Carrie getting clean and sober?
Yeah.
What were the circumstances around that? Did she want to get clean and sober? Was it thrust upon her?
No, she wouldn't have done it unless she was completely ready. Very headstrong was Carrie.
Had she tried before?
I don't think so, because she didn't admit that she had a problem. And she was an actress. She was an amazing actress. She was in the last year of her life, she was in a top 10. I think it might have been the number one Netflix film. What was it called? I Used to Be Famous. Brilliant film with the main guy in it. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Ed Skrein or something like that. His name is. He's in Star Wars and things like that. But she was a brilliant actress, and she was in a company called Clean Break, which helps women that have had, I think it's an interaction with the criminal justice system. I don't think it's purely addiction. And you've got some amazing women, world famous women that have come through that system. In fact, one of them was one of Carrie's friends when we did, we organised an event last June on her birthday in memory of Carrie. And some of the people that were there, like hugging someone that was in the last Avengers film and stuff like that, because she was good friends with Carrie. And they'd all heard of me, which was lovely. They were like, oh my God, you're Richard. Oh, she just always spoke about you. And it was just lovely. But that's how I think that was the start of her recovery, because she got involved in that and realised, hang on, this is something that I really want to do.
So she didn't do it. She didn't receive kind of treatment in a rehab or...
She was a member of AA and NA. and went along to and found those extremely helpful.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
One of her sponsors I'm now linked with on social media, and she was just, I know how much she valued that link, that friendship. And she's an amazing woman, actually. I don't know her well enough, but what I do know, she's an amazing woman. And Carrie really benefited from that right up until the end.
Because 6 years in, from the outside looking in, I guess unless you're not in recovery yourself, you might think, 6 years, yeah, she's cracked it. That's kind of job done.
I suppose so, yeah. There was many times when from the outside looking in, I remember she came up to stay and I was making Hunter's chicken. And I said, oh my God, when we were shopping for the ingredients, I said, have you had the Jack Daniel's barbecue sauce? And she just looked at me. And I went, what? She said, Jack Daniel's barbecue sauce. I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I went, oh, so you can't even have barbecue sauce? So little things like that, I didn't, and I suppose it would vary, well, I don't know, I'd imagine it would vary person to person on limits and stuff like that.
I think it does. I think it's, depends. I think it depends on the person for sure.
Yeah, I think Carrie was scared of getting the taste for it again.
I know people within fellowship, but he wouldn't use, he'd check a deodorant didn't have alcohol in it, which many of them do. But to him,
it's going into your system a bit.
To him, that was not being abstinent, even at that level. So, how he coped in lockdown, I don't know, with the, alcohol gels everywhere and stuff.
God. Well, when I was in the police way back when, there was people going into Whitechapel Hospital and taking the alcohol hand wash and using that.
And they've changed it now as well, because a lot of people were. That's quite a well-known thing, I think. Kind of people who are in hospital and they can't get a drink and they're alcoholic, they will go for the alcoholic hand wash. I had a friend that drank aftershave. He used to nick his dad's aftershave and drink that. Jesus. It's not lovely.
That he did. Nice breath.
Yeah.
It's like dupe. I don't drink at all now, but not because I needed to stop or anything. I don't need it. A lot of people will say, oh, I need a drink before I get up and dance, or I need a drink before I get on the karaoke. Well, I do both of those things straight off anyway. So I'm quite a good place to be. Yeah, I don't need a drink. And so I think, do you know what? There's no point in me giving myself a hangover in the morning. But then, like I said, I've never been one of those people that will drink and drink and drink to excess. I've always had this inbuilt thing that almost works against the irrationality of being drunk, where I'll get to a point and instead of like being irrational, my brain will say, go on to water now. And so I'll go on to water.
Because you like being in control?
I think so.
Me too.
Well, probably, yeah.
Of
because
me,
I
at least,
also,
anyway.
well, no, I also like driving people home and making sure people are safe as well. So that's to do with control, I think. I need to be in control of that situation and make sure that everyone's in their safe environments.
I don't drink for that reason. I don't like. I'm very lucky that I don't like alcohol, and I certainly don't like it being out of control. I've had my wild days, and like you, I didn't regret them. And the warehouse parties in Manchester and the
I was never that cool. That sounds really cool.
I'm a bit older than you are.
You still sound more cool than me.
Well, it was all very experimental in time, and because we were lied to a lot growing up. Not my family, but by teachers and school and the establishment kind of thing. We had our drug education at school. I think we were in fourth year, and I think we're all sat on the floor in the hall. This hippie woman got on stage. You just know she was like proper flower child in a day. And she pulled out a fishing box and she pulled out plastic drugs. So, don't take this. This cannabis. Don't take this. This is no, I didn't have this. This is acid. Don't take this. And she went through them, what was available at the time. Ooh, why not? She didn't tell us why not to take them. But that was it. That was pretty much it. And I can remember even back then we were experimenting with banana skins.
Smoking them.
Yeah.
What'd you do for banana skin?
Well, we'd heard that Me and my mate Jimmy Busso at the time.
I'm laughing. I used to smoke herbs and spices up the cupboard in a roll.
We had a go. Yeah,
Glad my mum can't hear that.
Spice rack. Yeah, done that. But we do, if you dry out bananas, if you take the white pulpy stuff from on the skin, scrape it off, dry it out, smoke that'll give you a high. Anyway, we didn't have time to dry it out, so we were on our lunch break from school, and we nipped back to mine and scraped out a banana and stuck it in the microwave, and it just turned into glue. And we had to go at that, but we were trying all sorts. We kind of we were making our own rice wine, which turned into a bit of a business, and like sake and selling that at the under 18s disco.
Oh my god!
And then
Sake's
that's what we were doing. I think we'd seen it on the news about Afghanistan and how they were cultivating poppies for heroin, for opium, and they're putting slits on it. On the poppy head before it flowered, and then going back a few days later, and the opium would ooze out.
So it's actually telling you this on the news?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
So we were trying it on the poppies that grow by the canal. Anything. We were just trying to try anything. So we gathered it and smoked it, and it smelled like opium. The actual perfume when it. So it didn't feel like that, and it is the wrong species really. But that's where we were. We had Grange Hill and Zamo, and all the kids up Grange Hill singing "Just Say No." And in our year, we were all saying "Yeah." So and then we knock around with older kids, and they had cannabis. And
it's funny because I wonder how many kids would have been in that camp because it was more cool because that was on the TV.
Yeah,
specifically because it was there. That they would have gone and tried drugs. Luckily,
but you hit the nail on the head, though. Cool.
Yeah,
drugs. When
same with smoking and stuff like that, though, and drinking.
It feels cool, doesn't it? If you could take the cool out of drugs, I don't think people would start on it.
I still get it now. If I'm stood there having a cigarette, I'm well aware of the fact that I feel sometimes it makes me look cool, and then I think about it objectively. And no, it doesn't. People are probably thinking, why is he still smoking when everyone else is on vapes? And I feel like saying to them, oh no, I don't smoke in the week. I only smoke at weekends when I'm gigging. In fact, I don't feel like saying it. I actually do say that to them. And they're like, well, why would you smoke when you're singing? But anyway.
So that was once we had cannabis and we realised everyone had lied to us and this didn't kill us, because before that, drugs are going to kill you. So we tried our first illegal drug, which was cannabis, and we didn't die. And that was absolutely the gateway drug for us.
Do you think honesty would have changed that in any way? If she would have said, you won't die, but it's not good for you, or
I don't know. I guess it wasn't about the lies so much.
Sometimes it is though for kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
How dare you lie to me, like a rebellion?
Yeah, hey, this is
going to keep on smoking it, but show you that I won't die.
Actually, this is really funny. I've just emptied the fridge.
Mum's going to be fuming, but it was funny.
But then it was like, right, this didn't kill us. What's next? And for me, it was always, okay, what's next? That next. So then next it was speed. Trips and speed and mushrooms, the kiddie drugs. And
you say kiddie drugs. The only drug that I have really wanted, I mean, this is really bad to say, the only drug that fascinates me, I suppose, is mushrooms. Because I just think there's these things that grow in a field and they can alter my mind. And I've never had that feeling of mind alter to that extreme.
Yeah, hallucinogenics.
Hallucinogenics. And it fascinates me.
I think in nature there's quite a few, isn't there?
Yeah, but luckily, when I was in school, which was just a few years after you, I say luckily because that sounds horrible when I'm saying luckily, but there was quite a famous, was it Leah Betts?
Yeah, the copper's daughter, wasn't it?
Yeah, and she took I think she took one tablet or something and died or something. Anyway, she died. And that was the big news story when I was probably in first year of high school or something like that. That scared me enough to stop me.
That resonates with me quite strongly because we'd been up to the Technodrome rave up in Scotland and we were selling tablets.
Cool.
Right.
Not the selling tablets.
So
The rave.
So we were getting tablets, in my hometown for a tenner, and up there they were paying 25 quid. Didn't feel like dealers or anything. It's just what he did. They asked us bring it up. Like a couple of mates had met him on holiday, and how old was I? I was 17, and my mates were a couple of years older. Me and a mate in my year, and a couple of older lads that had left, like they're 21, but they were really cool raves, and we hang around with him because that opened all kinds of avenues for parties for us. It was kind of before, it was still very underground at the time. It was still incredibly underground. And anyway, we got Nick coming back, and we had some left and lots, Scottish banknotes and stuff. And we kind of got blocked in. It was a setup. We got back to our hometown about 3:00 on a Monday morning, and there was just like Range Rover in front of us, Range Rover behind, two boxed in, and that doesn't happen in our sleepy little town. And I can remember being in. Sorry, I've got to say this.
I was sat here thinking, oh my God, how does that make you feel when you're boxed in?
Well, never happened. I was more worried because I was driving the car. I wasn't insured because my mate was too off his head. He couldn't drive anymore, and it was a hire car because all our cars were knackered. And I was more worried about that than what was in the car. That's how naive we were. Because these aren't bad fear. These, we just didn't. I wasn't aware of how, of the consequences of that. I can remember being in court, and my family weren't. Do you remember Feeler, the badge? The make, so it's the badge was like the emblem was like the logo was like an F,
F-I-L-A, yeah.
So I had one with an E on, and my mum gave me that to wear in court. So I'm in front of a judge, and it's all I've got to wear with a big E on my chest. So,
oh my God,
yeah.
You're listening to that song. He's a good,
yeah. He threw the book at us. And he even said, I don't think any of you are ever going to do this again. But it was because Leah Betts had died, and she died off an apple I think it was. And I think it's because she overhydrated. So she basically drowned herself.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
I don't think it was particular. I think, the drug led to that.
Yeah, that definitely rings a bell. Yeah, I remember that. But that put me off trying. But maybe that's because I never was going to try. I don't know. That might make people, it could have made people think, oh, I fancy trying that. Or it could already be in someone's head that they're going to try that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that story might not have had any impact on me whatsoever, but I always credit that with the fear of me staying away from certain drugs.
And what would Carrie have done?
Well, she did. She did. She just did. And she would have known of the story.
I feel that's the difference between an addict and a non-addict. Is there's a line. There's so far. I think if you're an addict, nothing stops you.
Yeah.
Because in my heroin days, if somebody overdosed, and because there's a strong batch about, and this sounds quite terrible, really. If somebody overdosed and died off gear, we think, oh, where did they get that from? That must be really strong. Rather than, oh shit, let's stay away from that. It was the other way. Oh, who's selling that?
But isn't heroin like your first hit will take you up there, but the second hit will there, and then you're constantly chasing that first high? Is that correct or not?
I didn't enjoy it the first time, like you and smoking.
Yeah,
I didn't enjoy heroin the first time, but it's what we got into in clubbing. It was our off switch, really. That
was like a clubbing drug for you then.
It was a come down drug. We tried everything else. We had a mate who worked for Security Corps. He used to bring us like Tanazepam, green eggs, sleepers at the end of the night. We smoked ourselves down. The come down parties were nasty. Coming down off stimulants at the end of the night, off ease and speed, and you've had your head in a bass bin all night in a club, and it's all that muffled sound. Oh, it was just so dirty and nasty, the come down. So nothing else. And then on the jail sentence that we did for the ease and stuff, a couple of my mates, the older ones, they tried heroin, and that was our line in the sand that we wouldn't cross, but they tried it, and they were using it outside. And when they came out, and me and my mate tried it as well, and my mate never tried it, and I didn't stop for 25 years, but we used
25 years.
We used it initially as a come down drug after the club, after the party. We go for a little smoke, and it was like it was our silver bullet to the stimulants. But I certainly didn't enjoy it the first time I had it. I had to had to learn to like it, if that makes sense.
I guess
like
around the Chester area when you were using. I wonder if you ever knew my brother.
Cheshire area.
Yeah, he was, Chester, he was on the streets, but him and his girlfriend, and he got off, I think he just went cold turkey after 4 years, just thought, do you know what, I'm going to stop. But his girlfriend couldn't, and no, actually, at first she did, and they split up, because it turned out, in his words, I think, he said, that was kind of the thing that they had in common, weirdly.
Yeah.
But I think
I get that.
I'm right in saying that it was my uncle that gave him his first, that kind of got him onto it. Now, my uncle is someone that abused me as a child, so I wouldn't put that past him. But I don't know. Never spoken about it with my brothers. Don't know if they were abused sexually as well by him. But he certainly wasn't a nice guy, isn't a nice guy. See, I've never told my family this. So oh well. He's a kind of outcast uncle now. So
if you feel that you don't want this included later, let us know.
It's all right. Okay. Because everything that I am is because of everything that's happened in my past, and I'm proud of who I am now. So I'm fine with that. If people want to question it, then it's my story. If they want to question me about it, then I'll either tell them where to go or I'll tell them about it. So it's all right. But yeah, I think my older brother told me that he gave him his first what do you call it, a hit?
Yeah, a hit. So my first high wasn't up here. I think for crack, the first time I had was my highest high, and after that, I was just always chasing that. And looking back, I didn't even enjoy it. It just made me paranoid as hell. Whereas heroin. Have
you had your teeth done? Yeah, only because my brother's got terrible teeth from using heroin for 4 years.
Well, yeah, methadone, heroin, the lifestyle, the homelessness, the violence that you're exposed to.
Because for people that can't see, you've got lovely teeth.
Thanks. Compliments to the dentist. Yeah. I came out of addiction in a really bad way. I was lucky. I mean, I died a couple of times and brought back, but I was lucky to have made it out the other side.
What gave you the strength or the idea, maybe, to just think, I'm going to get clean?
I think a good definition of addiction for me is using against my own will. I'd written myself off at 21. I think in my experience, addicts write themselves off way before other people do. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it was an easy way to keep using. It's like, it meant I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to address it. This is all it's down for me. This is all I'm worth.
So that was your identity?
Yeah, but I'd even had enough of it by then. But I just carried on and carried on and carried on. And so it wasn't about not wanting to start. I'd had attempts, but I was untreated. Countless detoxes and home detoxes, and.
But why? Where was the strength or the questioning for that? Why then? Why? What made you want to try?
Because it hurts too much. Just addiction is incredibly painful. The homelessness and the crime that's involved and the violence. And
does any of that, what's playing on your mind there, those things, does any of it, is there any thought to, and what is all of this doing to my family or friends?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I'm basic question. Can you even think outside of the box in that situation?
Yeah, but my answer to that was removing myself from the family, because I couldn't stop. Addicts can't stop.
Yeah.
If you're an addict like me, of the hopeless variety, mm-hmm. you can't stop. Nothing. There's no consequence that would make you stop. I know people that have had limbs amputated and they're still using because they've injected in the groin and it's solidified and, congealed and all the rest of it, and they've had limbs taken off. They're still scoring. They're still using.
Well, there's people dying of lung cancer and stuff that are still smoking.
True, exactly. It's addiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, it's a very good likeness. So it wasn't about that I didn't care, and I think when you're carrying that level of guilt and shame, The kind of drug acts as a bit of anaesthetic to that as well. You kind of bury that in your back of your mind and you think, okay, well, I just won't see them. I'll take myself out of the equation and then they don't have to see how bad I am. But then, is it also a case of I'm not really protecting my family, I'm protecting my addiction. So, there's many years that I'm not in family photos and stuff. They always thought it got worse over Christmas. It didn't. It's just that's when they saw me. Yeah, it's all a big build-up of guilt and shame and horribleness, and I'm living in that lifestyle, and it's just like condensed misery. Absolutely no human being should ever have to suffer that. I think heroin addiction is the slowest form of suicide known to man.
Wow, that's powerful.
My high in the end wasn't even heroin or crack, it was overdose. So I used to put enough crack and heroin in a needle, more than I thought, because I didn't want to be around again.
So on purpose?
Yeah. But, and if I wasn't falling backwards and having an epileptic fit of the amount of drugs that I had, I'm not epileptic, but that's what that amount of drugs did to me, a proper overdose. If that wasn't happening, I thought that I'd been ripped off. And there wasn't really anywhere to go after that. I couldn't get any higher because I was dying. I was very close to death every time.
It's crazy to think of.
Yeah.
Is that crazy for you to think of now?
Yeah. But it's where I was.
Yeah.
And that is part of my recovery now, that I hold that pain. I'm not trying to bury that. I'm not trying to deal with it. I'm not trying to come to terms with that. I don't want to. I don't want to work my way through anything. I want to keep that pain really close to my heart so I don't go back. I'm not trying to forget my addiction. It's a big part of my recovery to remember how bad it was, because it was really terrible, and no human being should ever have to experience what I've been through. And recovery is the kindest thing I've ever done for myself and my family.
Did you have to get to a point first where you could admit that you deserved that kindness?
Not really. I mean, I did what a normal life. My friend bought me a saxophone when I came out of my last prison sentence because he didn't want me to go back to prison. He thought we'd just go and busk. And, so I was on the streets of Bangor and Llandudno and stuff, and on the front there, just swing numbers. And I was living in a car park, and it was hot, it was all nasty. And I used to see the world at kneecap height. So, I was on the floor busking, looking like crap. And I just saw everybody walking across me, past me. I just saw the kneecaps going past. That was my day, just looking at kneecaps, really.
That's really powerful as well.
And I just remember thinking, I don't know you. I've got no idea, but I know you've got a better life than I have, and I want it. I was just thinking, I want your life. It's got to be better than this. I just remember thinking that a lot. So I think pain is a great instigator of change.
So physically and figuratively, you were below everyone else almost.
Well, yeah, I think it's, I was living on the underbelly of society.
But do you think with you busking, with you doing that you started to see your own value?
No, how do you mean?
Started to see that you did have something to offer society. You were doing something that people were enjoying. Because
the shopkeepers weren't.
No, I bet they weren't. But, but if you have...
I did get a buzz when the old days came and they started dancing in front, kind of playing a bit of Sinatra or kind of...
See, I wonder if that was the same with Carrie when she was doing on a stage or whatever. If you're an artist and you're suppressing that talent that you have, that can't be good for your soul. But when you start showing it, maybe you're showing yourself a bit of kindness and think, do you know what, I deserve a bit more here. I don't know.
I didn't have a lot of kindness for myself. I think that comes... in my case, it came from going through my last rehab, because you think you get into recovery, you come out of addiction. I can't talk for everyone, but I think it's quite common to think you come out of a lot of guilt and shame of all the shit you've done over the years and all the things that have been done to you as well. It's quite equal. I've had terrible things done to me. I've done not nice things as well, not nasty things. I was never violent or anything. It's just not in me. Robbing, thieving, all that kind of stuff, having people off and that. It's
when I said about Carrie before, sometimes getting violent, it wasn't sustained violence. It would just be like the odd come on or a claw, a scratch or something like that. It wasn't-
Richard, I think if you put enough cocaine and alcohol into the Dalai Lama, he's going to kick off at some point.
We're not trying that though.
So I don't think it's her nature. I think it's just what happens when people drink and use, and that combination is that's like a grenade pin being pulled out. People who are very kind of mild. Mm-hmm. You put cocaine, that level of stimulant into them, along with heroin that totally gets rid of any of their inhibitions. Oh God! I said I'm not violent.
Yeah.
Oh God! I went to London to my sister's to kind of. It was an attempt to get clean, right? She invited me down there, and just on the sofas rattling for days. And then I went out with one of her friends, and he kind of gave me quite a lot of cocaine and alcohol, and you know what? Everyone else it was Walthamstow Village, and
Quite close to me in Tottenham.
yeah, and everyone was at it. Everyone was doing that kind of thing. It's about 2000, and they all say, "Let's just stick with us, just drink and take coke, and that's you clean." I thought, okay, I might be able to do that, but it didn't agree with me at all. And I drank and used to excess, and I hit somebody. And I remember having a fight at school, and I really hurt the guy because I was always a bit of a lump, and I really caught him, and it worried me. And I really didn't have a fight, the odd jail fight, but there was a Chris de Burgh impersonator.
Well, why wouldn't there be?
And I was leathered, and he was singing Lady in Red, and I really didn't like it. And I got on stage and punched him.
I feel really bad for laughing.
I got on stage and punched him. And the bouncers were kicking me out. They were patting me on the back.
Wow. Never seen you looking so lovely as you did today. Oh, wow. Okay. So never seen Lady in Red around you.
I just illustrated that you put enough cocaine and alcohol in someone that, it just changes that person.
Yeah, the only times that I've never been in a fight in my life. The only times that it's been close is when somebody has been at a gig normally. I sing with a band around Wrexham, but I also sing on my own, but I never seem to get any bother there. But when I'm with the band, I would say near enough every gig that we do, nearly every gig I get offered cocaine. Or the new one, ketamine, which seems to be everywhere. I know it's not new, but it seems to be quite prevalent these days.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But near enough every gig we do, I will go for a pee, and whilst I'm having a pee, somebody says, "Oh, have a key," and I was like, "What do you mean a key?" And, like, oh, and they put it on the end of a key. I'm sounding really uncool now, but they'll say that to me near enough every gig, and if I wanted to, it would be free. Thankfully. Wrong word maybe, but thankfully, because of Carrie, I have tried coke and it never did anything for me. So I don't know whether I say no because of that or just because I just think, no, I need to drive home at the end of this.
The only time I've been offered drugs for free is when I was clean.
It's like looking for a new partner. You won't find them if you're looking. That's what they say. But no, if I wanted to, I could have coke every weekend for free. There's a singing page that I'm on Facebook, and I said this on there. Somebody said, "Where are you gigging?" I was like, literally every time I go out with the band, not literally every time, probably every other time with the band, I get offered it. And it's not just a certain area it's everywhere we play, and we play all over North Wales, all over the Northwest, sometimes. And so it's not geographical or anything like that. It just seems to be that if you're going out these days, it's a very standard thing to do. Is that the same 25 years ago, or was it more like?
No, I'd say I think cocaine was a bit more special.
Cocaine was like the rich drug back then, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it's what rich posh boys did.
Yeah,
what still is.
It was 60 quid then. It was 60 quid now as well. So yeah, it was a bit rarer, I guess, for us anyway. It was, but
well, that was another thing with Carrie. I used to think, how can you afford to do this, even with the alcohol, which I know is relatively cheap, but yeah, exactly, yeah.
You always find a way. Is your brother in recovery?
My brother is now 44, and as far as I'm aware, hasn't used since he was 20. And he is someone that, I've never really thought about this, but he's someone that can have the occasional drink and have the occasional spliff, and but he's never veered back to heroin, where his ex-girlfriend did, and then she's had a terrible life. I think she's had like kids taken off her, and when me and my mum saw her a few years ago, and we hadn't seen her, bear in mind, coming up 20 years. And she just came in the shop and she went, "Oh, hi, Richard. Hi, Jane." As if it was like we'd seen her the day before. And my brother said something like, your time works different on heroin. So she might not have even realised that it had been nearly 20 years, because it was just really weird. I heard her voice and I thought, oh, that's her. And the way she said hello to me and Mum was as if she'd seen us the day before, not 20 years earlier. It's very strange. But yeah, she went back on. But Matthew, I don't think has ever even... Actually, no, he has said to me once, yeah, there's always the want to try it, but he's got his family now, and I think I don't know if it works like this, but I think he's got reasons if they're needed.
I think that's kind of recovery capital, because when heroin was everything to me, it was the only reason I got out of bed when my dealer phoned me. It was the only reason I went out when it was everything that existed, and I didn't need anybody else. So, it was absolutely heroin was absolutely everything to me. Kind of my partner, my comfort, my go-to. Nothing else, no people left in my world, but heroin was always there. That was still always there for me. When a drug becomes, or a drink, it becomes absolutely everything, your absolute reason for being. Yeah, I feel you've got to build up quite a lot in your life to get to the point where it's not worth it. Mm-hmm. I'm at that point. Hope I am. I've got a lot in my life. I've got my family back. I've got, kind of built eternal up with help and amazing people around me. I've got an interesting life now. I'm happy. I'm settled. And many, many things besides, include getting rid of that self-loathing and self-hatred that we spoke about earlier. All that is gone now. I don't hate myself. I don't even hate myself for those years. As your experience has built you into the person that you're proud of today, my experience has built me into the person I am today. And every time I run some like a recovery, whatever it is, podcast or training academy or recovery focus or whatever we do, it could just be taking somebody to NA or AA or something like that. Whatever it is, it makes my 25 years feel a little less wasted every time, and a bit more of an education. All right, the education cost £3 million and a hell of a lot of misery to everyone around me, including me. But that's where I was. That's where I am now. This is where I am now. And it's useful. Those years, that experience that I'm not wasting it. I haven't tried to bury it. I haven't tried to hide it. I'm using that to try and help other people now.
Yeah. That's amazing.
The program of recovery I'm on, if you had to boil it down to two, if you had to condense it down into 2 points, it would be from 12, it would be stay clean, help others. And it kind of works. And by helping others helps me as well. With your brother,
yeah,
he's building up that collateral. He's got his family, and I guess he's got his job and whatever else his passions are, what he loves. There's something inside that may still crave it, or may still think, oh yeah, through rose-tinted specs. Oh yeah, I could just do that. And then very quickly he's bringing, I've got my family, I've got this, I care too much about them, So it's just not worth it. Because somewhere he knows he'd lose all that if he went back.
I mean, he has things now that might be slightly, I don't know, addictive. My brother uses technology all the time. Like, he invited us round for Christmas, me, my little brother and him, and all of our partners and stuff, and the kids. And we all went round to his at Christmas, and he was nowhere to be seen for the whole time. He was in his room on his computer, which is, he's on all the time. And he's bought, I suppose it's more... not addictions. He becomes obsessed with certain things, like the 3D printer that he's bought, and he spends thousands of pounds on technology, yet never takes his family away on holiday abroad. They go away in this country, but they'll never. I think my sister-in-law goes away with her friend and stuff like abroad, and they'll sometimes take the kids, but as a family, they never go abroad. Now, he used to say that was a fear of flying and stuff, but now he just says, no, it's too expensive. And we're like, you've just spent like over $1,000 on that drone or whatever it is. And it's like, so he's got these obsessions.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's connected.
It kind of, it feels like it is, doesn't it? It feels like it's kind of manifesting in that way.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's all right. He's not killing himself. He's not killing anybody else.
No. I used to feel really guilty though with Carrie, because she got to do this acting, and she was on some of the biggest stages in the West End and got taken to Broadway with one of the shows, and she was doing all of this amazing thing. And I used to think, do you know what? I always wanted to be a performer, and I've been clean. And I've been a good boy. And there's times when I wanted to disappear from society, but I couldn't because I knew I had to do this, and I've done all of that. And you get the fast track just because you were naughty. And I used to think like that. And I still do sometimes. If I'm honest, I still do sometimes think, I've been too good. And that's a really horrible thing in my head, because I'm constantly fighting with things like that and thinking, kind of fighting against that, because as somebody, like I say, on the peripheral of addiction, you've got the experience that's not yours, it's here, but you've also got the stigma that's not yours, it's here from wider society. So you've got both of those things kind of pushing against you. So being the friend of somebody with an addiction can be kind of hard, not to play the victim. It can be kind of hard sometimes. You've got conflicting thoughts that are kind of fighting. Well, I'm saying I had, from my point of view.
That's really interesting, because Carrie might have been given a break because of the hell she went through in addiction, and the whole head fuck of it, and I think it's absolutely natural if to kind of have a bit of jealous of it. Oh God, I've been so good. Why she got all that? She had a break. She wasn't given the talent.
No.
She wasn't given the drive to carry on. In fact, she probably had a bit too much drive. That's why she kind of drove her addiction so far.
Do you know what? Not just because she was my best friend, but she was one of the most talented actresses. She was just so real. I said to her, everything that I've seen you in, you've made me cry, even if it's not even supposed to. It was just the realness of it and the rawness of her performance, possibly because of obviously because of the things that she's been through, but a little bit of that will have been because of the addictions, I suppose, and the things that she saw and felt. And
she's like, you said she was a fantastic actress.
Oh yeah.
I would say they were possibly transferable skills through being an addiction. Because
masking and stuff like that from people.
I don't know. I had to be everybody I needed to be in front of that person, whoever that person needed me to be or wanted me to be, so I could manipulate money out of them or drugs out of them. And trying to manipulate drugs out of a drug addict is incredibly tough. It could have been a lift, it could have been lying to family, it could be lying to a girlfriend. Whatever it is, it's still creative. You become hardwired for bullshit. And what's bullshit if it's not creative? So once you can bring the honesty into your life, but keep the hardwiredness of creativity, you kind of really do well in creativity.
Yeah, and absolutely she did. Like, I just feel like it's been robbed though now. Like, she had so much more to give, and it was just kind of taken off her in a big way. She went at the wrong time, silly girl. I just wish I feel like she kind of organised that trip for me to come down to London 3 days earlier.
As a goodbye kind of thing.
I think so. Although I was texting her the next few days saying, come on, you've got this, we can do this. What do you want from me? What can I do? What can I do to help? And the last text I think I got from her is, I think I'm going to be all right. I've got counselling sorted through the doctors. I think I'm going to be all right. And then the next day, her sister-in-law phoned me. We'd just come home from somewhere, so it's about 10 o'clock at night, and she said, have you heard? And I instantly, at first I thought, why is she calling me? Not in a nasty way, it's just that she wouldn't normally call me. And my first thought was, oh God, Carrie's son's done something. He's hurt himself, or he's killed himself. That was my first thought. And then she just said, Carrie's dead. And my partner said I just fell to the floor and I was screaming. Couldn't couldn't understand it. Like, even though I'd seen her 3 days earlier and she was in a different headspace than I'd probably ever seen her before, we had the most lovely day. This is why I think that she'd maybe okayed it in her head, like that it was her goodbye. We had a really lovely day. We nearly ran over Liz Truss, which just added to it. She just walked out in front of my car. Carrie went, "Was that Liz Truss?" I went, "Yes, it was." I could have spared the world this book that she's just brought out, but if I'd have just swerved the right way instead of the wrong way. Sorry, that's horrible. And we had a lovely walk through the park, and we spoke about the olden times. We just had the most lovely day, and then we went to see Melanie C doing a dance show in Sadler's Wells. And then when we were leaving, I gave her a hug, and I had to rush off because I remember I only had 3 hours in the car park in Tottenham where I just stupidly left my car where I had 3 hours free. And so I had to rush off. So we had a big hug, and then I ran off. And then to have that call three days later, almost I was thinking, after all that hard work that you've done, part of me wonders if you said about the guilt before, and part of me wonders if she'd put that aside because she had other things that she thought she had to deal with. Now she had no addiction to kind of take those things away, like her mum's death and stuff like that. And sometimes I wonder if she put all of her efforts into mourning her mum or grieving her mum and the way that she went, and other things as well, that she forgot about maybe the guilt that would come later. Because I don't want people that are listening to this thinking, "Oh, there's no point in recovery. I'm still going to get these bad feelings and maybe want to take my own life." I don't think that everyone will think that, and I don't want them thinking that. Carrie had been in some amazing places and did some amazing things, possibly, because of her bravery and stuff. But then at the end, everyone's story's different, and Carrie's ended like that. So I don't want anyone thinking there's no point in what I've said. I wouldn't want anyone to think that.
Do you feel guilty?
I used to say to my mum, "Are you sure you're not Roman Catholic or Jewish? Because I feel like there's a massive guilt complex going on in this family." My mum I love my mum. My mum was my world, absolutely. But she did rule a lot through guilt. So I always feel guilty about everything. I was one of those people that would hold the door open for somebody, and if they didn't say thank you, I'd say, "I'm sorry." I would apologise for bumping into somebody. Not so much anymore, since realizing my worth and I'm important and not putting myself below other people and stuff. But yeah, I feel a lot of guilt. Being a mental health counsellor, I felt like I'd failed massively. I've possibly been in a dark place for the last year and a half because of it, a darker place. Thankfully, my resilience over, say, the last 10 years has risen to a stage where if I do fall, I'm above a line that before I would have been below. But I do still feel guilty. I wish that I'd said certain things to her on that day. And if I had, would this have changed or that have changed? Possibly it wouldn't, as people keep telling me. But there's got to be something that I could have said. I don't know. I do feel like maybe there's something that I could have said. And while there's a silence, I need to go for a pee again.
Everything you've just described, it just kept coming up in my mind. Helplessness. So you're a counsellor. You've had a lot of experience working with people, even in the police, and there's a horrible word, and it's called should. And it brings all kinds of connotations of guilt and shame because I try to eliminate it out of my dictionary.
So do I, when I'm working with
should
clients.
is a terrible word, isn't it? And it feels like you feel I should have been able to do something about Carrie's death.
I have always tried to learn. I've always tried to gain something from negative situations and make sure that I can learn something. So I suppose when Carrie took her own life, I spiraled because I should or coulda, woulda, shoulda, what could I have said? What should I have done? What I should have known better, that sort of thing. But that allowed me to put myself in a different it allowed me to put myself in the position of somebody who's lost someone to suicide, which I'd never been able to put myself in before. It gave me that experience of direct almost experience of having this friend. Sadly, actually, a few months later, one of her other friends took her life in the same way. One of the same group of friends. I don't know if it was linked, but she was one of Carrie's friends. I knew her, but Carrie was my friend. And I suppose it's difficult, but I suppose from all of those shoulds and all of those what ifs, if I can learn something, then I'll try my best to, because then it's not a wasted negative experience, I suppose, which they're there. I can't change that it happened, but I can try and learn from it, which I try to do. And that's sometimes really hard because you don't want to. You want to curl up, throw the covers over your head and just shut off from the world. I keep saying you, what I mean is me. I wanted to hide away and throw the covers over my head. But because it's so much harder when it's your mate that you've known for over, well, it was 20 years. And I know you've got all those experiences of. Yesterday I was watching the marathon. I put this on my social media because it made me laugh. I was watching the marathon and it reminded me of a time when Carrie was coming to see me. I lived in Canary Wharf at the time. And she tried to cross the street just as loads of runners were coming. And she ended up, I saw her just running down the street with 2 carrier bags full of alcohol, shouting help. Swept away with the marathon runners, these bottles clinging in her bag. Which help, I can't get help. Running a marathon by accident. And that's, I've got all of these memories of this amazing woman that was just, honest to God, she lit up a room. She was hilarious. She was just so special, and she's just one of these people that would walk in and very Barbara Windsor-like, tiny, blonde, very Cockney. In fact, I used to say that she was Barbara Windsor. Like that's what it was like, and very much a vibrant, just an amazing girl who I will miss, obviously, for the rest of my life. And I just can't believe that she's not here anymore.
How are you working through this yourself, through all these feelings you're having?
Well, I lost my mum 11 months earlier than that. And I almost feel like Carrie helped me. It sounds very horrible when I say these things out loud. In my head, they sound all right. But I feel like Carrie helped me by punctuating, almost punctuating my grief. 11 months after my mum died in February 22, Carrie took her own life in January 23, and I feel like there was it was a punctuation for me. A punctuation mark in my grief for my mum was Carrie killing herself, and I that sounds so, I don't know, to me that sounds almost horrific, me saying that, but it did help the grief from my mum. And because I'd had such a close relationship with my mum, because it was such a horrible grief of somebody very close to me, I almost had experience of it. So I knew not to shut down. For me, I'm talking, everyone goes through it differently, but for me, I knew not to shut down. I knew not to stop watching videos, looking at pictures, going through memories. I knew not to stop the emotions, the anger, the guilt even. I knew to go through all of these, that I had to go through all of these things. So I suppose losing them both quite close to each other sounds horrific, and it was. But I wonder if both of those things actually helped me get to where I am now. I still think that I'm very much in grief because there were 2 people that probably, well, without a doubt, they're the 2 people that have shaped my life most.
What would you say to anybody in addiction? And I think if somebody is in addiction, there's that pain and desperation and misery anyway. Mm-hmm. What would you say to anybody in addiction? What would your message be?
The first thing that's coming to me is a little bit of what you said before about pushing people away almost, or turning away from the people that care for you. If you've got someone that cares for you, turn to them rather than away. But again, I don't know if I'm speaking to people in addiction there, or Carrie.
What would you say to anybody? Well, it's aimed at family members and loved ones of people in addiction. What would you say to them who currently have an addict they really care about?
They are, I mean, not always, not everyone's blessed with a family that loves them, but the second part of that is loved ones, which I suppose incorporates some family members, and the word's loved in there. If you've got someone that you know loves you, regardless of anything, use them, use that love, and never be trying to never be afraid to ask for that help, especially if somebody's offering it, because they're offering it. I don't feel like people should feel, oh, I don't want to put upon them. Well, if they've offered to help, or if you know that they would help, use that. Use whatever you need to, and that's not to say that you can use it to get over your addiction. Use it to help you through, if that's what you need to do. One of the big things for me that I hate to see is when I see a homeless person and people say stuff like, "Oh, don't give them money; they'll go and spend it on whatever." And I always think, so what if they want to? And I don't know if that's good or bad for me to think that, but I just think if you can't force anyone out of addiction, I suppose. So use the love around you to try and, because it's there. In a lot of cases, you'll find it. You'll find some love. And if that's what it takes for you to find the love for yourself as well, then use it. If somebody loves you, they love you for a reason. So try and think that when you're thinking that you're worthless, you're clearly not.
It's a very lonely place to be in addiction.
Addiction's extremely lonely, isn't it?
From the outside looking in, it can look very selfish. And I guess it was. But when you can't stop and you don't know how to stop and you remove yourself, it's just such a lonely, lonely place. And the only thing keeping you company at that point is your drug of choice. And I get it. I do get it that you don't want to be around anymore. You don't want to be on the planet anymore.
I wonder if the stronger message then would be to the people on the peripheral or even further, and to not judge. The more it's stigmatized, surely the harder it's going to be for the person in the grips of that addiction to want or ask for help.
I think addiction is a great leveler. There's no rhyme or reason. It affects rich people and poor people, and it's not a disease of any particular demographic. It affects everybody globally in one way or another. And there's just no shame in it. There's no shame, there's no guilt to carry about it. It's just a disease of addiction, of obsession.
It comes in many shapes and sizes.
I can remember, I think we were 12 or 13, and we had options at school. And even back then, you had to kind of decide what you kind of wanted to do, and you had to take the... At no point did I put my hand up and say, I want to be a heroin addict. That wasn't an option for me, but I went there anyway.
When I was 14, I wanted to be a dad. That was my thing. I remember going to the careers thing, and she said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be a dad." Never got there. But yeah, that's that, yeah.
Do you feel there's any questions I haven't asked you that you feel you'd like to answer anyway?
No, do you know what? It's great. It's great to just sit here and talk about Carrie. It's nice to just speak about her, and I hope that it hasn't come across that I judged her and was judgmental. She accused me once of being judgmental, and I remember thinking, I've tried my best not to be judgmental. I've actually actively stopped myself sometimes from judging, which maybe means that maybe I was, but I hope that if anyone's listening to this, they've got the right picture, that anyone in addiction, like you say, they're just a normal person that's loved, that loves, that all of these things. It's just a normal person, which I think sometimes is missed, and I think people see the addiction rather than the person.
Were you frustrated with Carrie? And that's
during the addiction, or
yeah, is that where the kind of because, I know people in addiction. I want, and at the point where they're at, I want their recovery more than they do. And I'm frustrated that I can't, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink kind of thing.
Well, another reason why I feel a bit of guilt probably is because I enjoyed drunk Carrie. I enjoyed, sometimes it was hilarious. So there's almost an element of maybe I was fueling a bit of that behaviour because I enjoyed it. Not fueling it literally. I'd never have the money to buy it for her, but just almost encouraging it. So there's a bit of guilt around for that, I suppose. I wasn't sort of standing up and saying, no, you should start. Like I was saying before, there was no intervention. Maybe a part of that was because I enjoyed that side of Carrie.
Because I think frustration and anger, anger's just another word for frustration. It all comes from fear, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. All these negative feelings come from fear. And I get it. I get why my family were angry at me. It's because they couldn't help. Mm-hmm. I get why they had to let go, because they couldn't help. And at some point, you just got to look after yourself.
I think that's why my elder brother ended up on the streets.
We had a family member that never gave up. And I think, it's not for me to give a message to, well, maybe it is, I don't know. So I'll put it on the show. It was really, really important to me that I at least had a family member or two that never gave up on me. And I knew they hadn't. And I totally understand why other family members just had to, really, for their own sanity and for their own kind of well-being and for their own lives. They just had to let go with love for a while. And it's that hope, having people believe in you and having hope that you can turn it around was important also.
My mum was an extremely loving mum, so I think about that when I think about my mum. I think, how did she allow my older brother to go and live on the streets? And it's because she had 2 other kids. I remember she used to say how when he was trying to give up, and she'd never seen him in so much pain. So when he asked her to, she actually went and bought heroin. Now, my mum was she was born in 58, but her parents were nearly 40 when they had her. So they were near enough Victorian, nearly. My granddad was 1916 born and had a very Victorian, 15 years afterwards, but had a very sort of Victorian, old-fashioned. The last thing I could imagine my mum doing was going and buying drugs off the street. But she did, because she'd never seen my older brother in that much pain. And I can't imagine my mum doing that. So to then imagine her having to kick him out, knowing how kind of we were always her everything, I can't imagine that, like you say, that almost suspension of love, or just a shut off from it for a bit, for the greater good, maybe, I don't know, or for the best of me and my little brother.
Maybe more letting go with love, just still love, but... Sometimes you have to let people fall.
But it's very strange. Like, we as a society, or we see homeless people as those people over there. Well, I used to walk into Chester and we'd look out for my older brother, and it'd be almost like a fun thing to do. Oh, there he is, and we'd go over it. Hey, there's Matt, and it'd be nice. It'd be like, I don't know. It wasn't obviously from his point of view. It must have been horrible. He was on the streets, and maybe shame and embarrassment, and maybe all of these things were going on. And we were like, I'd go into Chester with my then girlfriend, different life, and we'd look out for him almost as if it was like going visiting the relatives, just like the norm. That's strange to think about. I'd not really thought about that. But yeah, it was just like, there was no abnormality to it. It wasn't like, oh God, there's my brother again, or anything like that. It was just like, oh, let's go and see Matthew. And I'd be dead excited because he wasn't living at home anymore. So it was nice to see him.
Yeah, I think when you kind of down the rabbit hole that far, was I embarrassed or anything being on the streets or anything? I didn't really think about it. I just needed my drug. That's all. It was all about that. The getting and using. I only had 2 feelings. I remember being in rehab, and they had to give me a chart of feeling. Everybody knew how I was feeling about 2 days before I did. And they had to give me an A4 sheet, double-sided, of all the feelings you can possibly think about, because I didn't know. I had happy I've got drugs, unhappy I haven't got drugs, and that's what I had for like a couple of decades. And and I can honestly say that's all there was to it. Happy, got, not happy, not got.
Yeah, that seems familiar, thinking of Carrie, actually. At night, it seemed like it was timed. Like during the day, there was the whole range of everything and normal life. Going and buying super noodles for our dinner, that's, normal things. And it seems like nighttime was when the addiction happened, the addictions, the drugs and the drink. But that probably wasn't the same for Carrie. It probably was 24/7.
I think we need to wrap it up. Anything else you'd like to say, Richard?
No, it's been cathartic to sit here and let it out, get it out.
God, I've really enjoyed it.
Me too.
I'm learning a lot as well. I know, I've got a lot of experience in addiction. I've got a bit in recovery. I'm in 10 years. And I think once you think you've cracked it, you're in trouble. I still don't even know what I don't know.
Oh wow, that's great.
So thank you very much for coming here today and being a
me.
part of the Recovery Hub podcast.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. What I really enjoy about this episode is just how relatable Richard is in his position as a really close friend to someone in addiction, and the helplessness that he felt, and the way he felt so regretful of not doing as much as what he felt he could have done. I really enjoyed how, with Richard being a counsellor, that he was taking the opportunity to ask Marcus to learn about addiction for himself and to really learn more about his best friend Carrie and her situation with her addiction. I really feel for Richard and how helpless he felt in the situation with Carrie. And I think it's conversations like these, it can really prepare people for going through similar situations where you may have loved ones or best friends going through addiction. And with having heard conversations like this, then it can prepare you for knowing how to go about having conversations with your loved ones to better understand them and to support them. And next up, we have something different again. We went over to Rill, where we recorded a live share from a mutual aid group. Sarah shares her story of how her husband Danny was in addiction and what she had to go through during his active addiction. Hope to see you there.